So getting into a nice neutral setup position, specifically with the pelvis, is super important for us to be able to create good rotation and a good loading pattern into the backswing. So one of the common positions I'll see players get into is, as they get set up, they have a lot of what's called anterior pelvic tilt, where we have quite a lot of arch in our low back. When we get into this setup position, it kind of turns off our abdominal muscles and it really puts a lot of tension on the low back. But not only that, as we begin to then make our backswing, it's very difficult to load correctly then into this trail hip and into this glute, because it kind of disconnects the upper half from the lower. We can get kind of problems with generating a good, powerful sequence in backswing and downswing. So a way to work on this, we're going to use a couple of alignment sticks, firstly to just build a picture of what we're trying to do at setup. So if I use these alignment sticks, so if you imagine this one is representing my pelvis, so if I had a nice neutral pelvis just standing up, imagine it's going to be nice and flat. If I have too much anterior pelvic tilt, you're going to see this part of the alignment stick point down to the ground. So we want to create a nice position where our pelvis is nice and neutral. Now we also want to represent here our rib cage. So again, our rib cage, if I have too much extension in my rib cage, that would also point the alignment stick up. And if I had too much flexion, it would be pointing the alignment stick down. So I want to get my pelvis and my rib cage here both quite neutral, where they're both nice and flat. Now, when I get into setup, I'm really trying to maintain this relationship between the rib cage and the pelvis. If I have too much of that anterior tilt that we spoke about, you're going to see the gap between these alignment sticks really get bigger. And that's going to, again, put stress on the lower back and make it difficult to create a good sequence and load into the backswing. Alternatively as well, we don't want to see excessive amounts of posterior tilt, as this can also limit the amount of rotation we can create in the backswing. So create a nice setup. You can do this in a mirror. Really get your rib cage down nice and neutral, pelvis nice and neutral, and then as you get into that good setup, really try and maintain that relationship between your rib cage and your pelvis. If we do that, it gives us a much better chance of loading correctly and building a better sequence then into our downswing in as healthy a movement as possible.